Okay. Thanks, Tyler. So I'll call to order the Monday, August 2nd, Beaverton Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, and we'll just do a quick round robin. I'll just go through my screen, and I see Scott first. If you want to do a quick introduction, Scott.
Yeah, Scott, Planning Commission, longtime member.
Perfect. Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Thieme with the City of Beaverton and the Economic Development Division.
Thanks, Rachel. Oswaldo.
Waldo Bernal, OBL Media, and South Beaverton resident.
Thank you, Oswaldo. Andy.
Andy Ellen, my second year on the committee and a resident of the Bose neighborhood.
Thanks, Andy. Chase.
Hi, everyone. Chase Landry, work for the City of Beaverton and work along with Tyler, some of these wonderful folks here.
Perfect. Thanks, Chase. Eric.
Hi, everyone. Eric Lear, third-year member and Five Oaks Triple Creek resident.
Perfect. And Tyler.
Tyler Ryerson, staff liaison to urban redevelopment. Thank you for everyone being here tonight.
Perfect. Josh. Good to see you.
Unmute. Hi, Josh Carrillo, Beaverton resident, first year on URAC and affordable housing developer.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. Nathan.
Evening, everyone. Nathan Purley here with Denny Woodford, and Raleigh Hills.
Perfect. Thanks, Nathan. Jennifer.
Good evening, Jennifer and I am a Central Beaverton resident, planning commissioner, and my day job is an architect.
Perfect. Megan.
Megan Rasmussen with the City of Beaverton and the admin department team.
Other Megan?
Yes, and how about the other Megan too?
Megan Braunsten, also in CDD, but I'm over in the development division with Tyler and Chase.
Perfect. Thank you. Katie.
Everyone, I'm Katie Rispoli Keaotamai. I'm in the development division, work with Tyler and other folks here, and I'm a South Beaverton resident.
Great, thanks, Katie. Welcome, Jerome.
Yes, I'm Jerome Yeoman. I'm from the Five Oaks Triple Creek neighborhood and have a business right smack down in the Creekside district there.
Yes, you do. And Ellen Kennedy with Twalton Valley Fire Rescue and representing special districts. Tyler, do we have any visitors on that you know of?
Don't see any. Megan, do you see anybody that, okay, I think we're good, Alan.
Okay, then I'll turn it back to you if you want to introduce Rachel and the Downtown Equity Strategy Update.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much. So Rachel Thieme is with us tonight. Rachel has come in and talked to us a few times in this past year. Downtown Equity Strategy that her and Cadence Petros are running, but it's not just those two. There's an army of staff and consultants who are working very, very hard and spending a lot of time of trying to understand and pursue what downtown equity means for our urban redevelopment agency. Rachel's going to be talking to you a little bit about what has transpired in this past month, and it's actually very, very fascinating and exciting. And I think she wants to talk to you a little bit about your thoughts as well as what her consultant team has talked to our urban redevelopment agency board. With that, Rachel's been with the city for what, 5 years or so, Rach? Is that close?
Yeah, about 4.5.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
About 5. Yeah,
About 5.
I'll take it. Great. Thanks for the intro, Tyler. I'll take it from here. I really appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I've got a fan going, so if it's too loud, just holler at me and I'll try to turn that off. As Tyler mentioned, I'm here tonight to talk with you about the downtown equity strategy, really to give an update of where we're at, and then I have some discussion questions for you specifically. I know you've heard me talk about this project before, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much, but we'll provide a little bit of context. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll during the discussion portion, I will turn this off so we can all see each other. So today I'd like to share some project updates and then have a discussion with you about kind of how our community engagement approach is shaping up, and kind of figure out what, if you want to weigh in on some of our priorities that we're considering. So you probably know by now we have a great consultant team that's local here to Beaverton. Vision Action Network is the lead, but it is also made up of the members of the Racial Equity Collaborative. So 4 different culturally specific community-based organizations, Garapano, Bienestar, Adelante Mujeres, and Coalition of Communities of Color, as well as Eco Northwest, which is a private consulting firm. They do economics and public policy, and that team is really leading this work and advising us along the way. And we've had a pretty exciting month. So it's great to have all of that support and really deep-seated community knowledge and understanding as we undertake this project. So just a quick recap. I think you all know this already, but essentially, you know, we have a big opportunity here to change the way we do urban redevelopment, urban renewal in Beaverton. As BURA is poised to spend about $100 million over the next 10 years in downtown Beaverton, we really want to lead with equity and ensure that that the place that's created at the end of this is really an inclusive downtown, and that as a result of the investments this does not result in displacement, and if and when it does, that we have a really solid plan to minimize it and to mitigate it and make it right. And so these are the 3 kind of big areas that we're looking to achieve once we are done with the downtown equity strategy, probably sometime next year. So we're looking to really prevent and mitigate displacement, to create this inclusive downtown, and then really update our decision-making processes to incorporate racial equity tools when it comes to community engagement, and really our decision-making processes for redevelopment and public infrastructure projects. So our consultant team has put together a really thoughtful approach to how we want to engage the community, which, as you can imagine, is really, really important for this particular project. And so what they've asked us to do before they give us a recommendation of all the focus groups and open houses and things that we should be doing is to really first conduct an internal equity assessment of where we're at. And so that's the stage of where we are now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our conversation with BURA last week. But really this step is really kind of where are we at? And then where do we want to go with this project? What does success look like? We've done a lot of initial community engagement, or a fair amount of initial community engagement already with some community organizations and residents about this project, just to make sure we had really the right project before we hired the consultant. But we obviously have a lot more to dive into. So once we've done this, we'll be planning some of our engagements, conducting engagement events, sharing the outcomes, and then iteratively talking to more people, but really drilling down as we develop those anti-displacement and inclusive downtown strategies. We want to make sure that this is a very community-led, community-involved process. So in terms of conducting the assessment, I think Chase may have shared this diagram with you all ahead of time, hopefully, because it's a lot to read on the screen, but this is the continuum on becoming an anti-racist multicultural institution. And this tool kind of helps us to see how we communicate about where we're at currently as a city, or as BURA, as a really an entity that's going to be promoting redevelopment in our downtown, and to really help us goal set for where we want to be. The next spectrum here is this spectrum of community engagement to ownership. So starting on the left with, do we ignore the community, or on the far right, do we defer to community? And so this is a really interesting graphic that can help us really kind of plan and really see the impact of engagement. As you can see here, there's some activity examples. So if we're in consult, if this is kind of where we're at or where we want this project to be, some of these are some of the activities that we could potentially do as a part of that effort. Or if we want to be even more community-led, we might go further along in the spectrum, and then we would adapt our tactics really to suit. So kind of an interesting way to assess kind of where we're at and where we're going, specifically with this project. And then I want to give credit to Jolie Brownell, who is an intern with community development, working closely on this project. And she's created this fantastic graphic that really we've been talking a lot about internally as a project team of, it's not enough just to defer to the community. If we defer to the community without really doing a racial equity assessment or impact analysis, we could possibly be just deferring to the loudest voices and the people who always come to the committee meetings, and that may not actually be shifting the dial in this project. So she's really put together this graphic, which I think is really cool, showing the sphere of people who are impacted, looking specifically at Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other marginalized communities to really put their experiences in the center, and look at who will be impacted by a particular decision that we may make. So I think these kind of three graphics together can give us a really good framework for where to go next. We had a really fantastic conversation publicly at BURA last Tuesday night. I'm not sure if any of you tuned in, but I highly recommend taking the time to watch that conversation. It was a really fabulous discussion that our consultant team led. We asked these 4 questions that are on the screen. Basically, kind of where are we at on that first spectrum? Where would you like this project to land on that second spectrum? What are some strategies that we can use to progress? And then what's important to communicate back to people? And I think that there was some really honest feedback about how we've done a lot of community engagement over the years, but we haven't always taken action, and that how that can really cause harm. And so one of the challenges is how we can kind of move past like symbolic gesturing and more into kind of resource and power allocation for BIPOC folks and other people in marginalized communities. They talked a lot about the second question of in community engagement. How do we get beyond looking at kind of quantitative metrics, like we talked to 100 people or we got 200 survey responses, and instead really trying to focus using that kind of impact racial equity analysis to look at who are we talking to, how did we engage, what are kind of the quality of the responses that we got, kind of shifting our thinking from methods that maybe traditionally were prioritized, and really trying to go a little bit deeper. That was a really great conversation. And then yeah, it was really, really great about how can we shift from, one member said, how do we shift from looking at our projects and programs from like, how does this support everyone, to how do we reach communities that we haven't traditionally heard from? And so a lot of food for thought. We will be meeting this week with our team members to really kind of debrief all of this and talk about kind of where we go next. On that note, one of the things that our consultant team is really pushing us to do is really looking at what we've already heard from people. We have done a ton of community engagement, as BURA talked about in the past, but I think internally, we haven't always put in the mechanisms to like share what we've learned from past projects. And so what we're doing now is really diving back into recent engagement that we've conducted in the downtown area or around, and looking at what the community has already told us about what they want to see downtown, what success looks like. And we're really culling that together to really kind of kick off our community engagement for this project, so that we're really much more community informed leading into whatever engagements we end up doing. And I just wanted to screenshot, I know this is not the most exciting slide, but just to give you a sense of like, what does this look like? So, some of the things we heard, for example, in our engagements last fall when we were interviewing community organizations in downtown, and we did a postcard survey, we heard things like, we want community engagement that's transparent, honest, builds trust and accountability. And so that's something that could be a success metric for this particular project. Other thing here at the top, wanting diverse and inclusive spaces for gathering. Some really great things that people have already told us. And so I think, we don't want to go back and ask the same questions over and over again. So trying to work smarter, and then we will then share this with all of our other colleagues so that everybody's current with what we've already heard. So just trying to shift the way that kind of we do business around community engagement. And so now I'd like to open it up to the group. I'd love to hear from you all. You all have seen a variety of ways that the city has come to you, or maybe you have filled out surveys or been in focus groups or other activities. I'd love to hear, where have we done really great community engagement and what's worked well? I'd also love to hear kind of the flip side, where do you think we've struggled or fallen short? And then the third question, where do you think engagement for this project should land on that spectrum of community engagement to ownership? And I'll share my screen. I'll paste the first question into the chat, but I wanted to see your faces. So if anyone would like to kind of kick this off, where have you seen the city do great community engagement?
I would say community events like the night market and so forth, I think have been major success.
Great. Anything in particular about that? I mean, we all know it's an amazing event.
No, I just remember the first time that I went and seeing all the promotion for it, and I was blown away by the turnout and the success of that event.
Thank you. Anything else, like when we've gone to the community to say like, hey, what should we do? What's your input about this particular decision or project? Is there anything that that has come out as like, yeah, that was really a great way to involve people, or anything that's even worked well here at URAC? Osvaldo.
Thank you. I think from speaking from my own experience, of course, the formation of the Diversity Advisory Board was a good step towards that, because it opened the door for a lot of the people who historically does not participate as much for whatever reasons. And that was a great first step. One of the things that that group was able to do was indeed the Beaverton night market. And that's just proof of what can come out of ideas that generate from that part of the community. And I think as we progress, and I did have an opportunity to look at the conversation that took place last week. It was wonderful. And it's good to see some of the new faces at the city council, like Councillor Hassan, who has some fresh ideas about this topic. And some things that she said are really just motivating, because it seems like there is going to be somebody at that level of the city that is going to keep our elected officials accountable for following through with these topics that are taking place. Because yeah, exactly like you said, Rachel, sometimes it's a lot of yeah, we say and not a lot of action. And that just really, yeah, it doesn't help when we're trying to invite communities to participate, and then we just basically disregard whatever it is that they contribute with. So from that standpoint, I think this is positive. I think opening the doors for more people from minorities, people of color to participate in the different boards. I have made it a personal goal of mine to talk to the Diversity Advisory Board members, that they complete 1 term, 2 terms, and then that they try to move on to other boards, because that will be true diversity at the city level, at the boards and commissions. So I think this is a really good step towards that direction, and I'm just happy to be able to contribute with things. And this is the beginning, because a lot needs to be done to invite the younger population from those communities to participate, to not be afraid, and to make sure that when they do, they are going to be heard.
Thank you, Osvaldo. Great. Anyone else? I can move on to this. Oh, sure. Yeah.
I would say one of the things that I've heard the city do that I think is powerful is just partnerships with community organizations. You know, these are groups that are already connected with diverse areas of the community. It's really a conduit to empower people in their voice, not just, you know, maybe bring in the stray individual who has an opinion about something, but you know, I really wonder how we make unheard voices more powerful. And I think connecting with those organizations is really one way to do that, and partnering with them.
Thank you very much.
Rachel, the other one that struck me, I agree with all three of those, is also the Leadership Beaverton. I mean, I don't know how many classes they've graduated now, but the 9 months, that takes some very quiet community members and really empowers them to get involved in the city, and the message that's sent to them from throughout the city is remarkable to see, witnessed over 9 months. That's an amazing course too.
Is that, are you talking about the BOLD program or the Leadership Beaverton program at the chamber?
Yeah, Leadership Beaverton through the chamber, yeah.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you all. I think the next side is, you know, kind of where we struggled or fallen short with community engagement. Anything, you know, we want to really learn from kind of what hasn't worked so that we can, you know, not repeat that and learn from there. Any examples that this group sees? All right. Well, you can definitely email me. I'll put my email in the chat. Oh, Osvaldo, you've got something?
I'll always offer an opinion if no one else has one. But yes, I think, again, I think where we're falling short, and just to basically second what Jerome said, is inviting others to the table. And it's just about how we go about doing that. I know it's difficult, but we need to find a way to invite others and to make sure that we're hearing from voices that we have not heard from. And sometimes that's just also something that we just get comfortable with. You know, we're hearing from representation, and that's good, but that's also part of the problem. So we need to come up with some ideas about how to just get to other organizations, other community members, particularly younger people.
Thank you. Chase, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Osvaldo, for sharing that. And I'd encourage you all to think too, as you know, not just maybe specific examples of things that didn't work, but general things that you think we could do better. There's a lot of history here between all of you, so definitely interested in hearing from some of you about where you could see us step our game up, so to speak.
I think it's always an issue of, you know, input isn't necessarily an end in itself. So often input gets lost or dropped. And real input is somehow reflected in policies and projects and so on. And I think that that's an important way to evaluate the quality of input that you're getting, and the meaningfulness of input is it reflected in policies? Is it reflected in projects? You know, not did you hear it, did you get it? Is it on, you know, somebody's notes someplace? But, you know, how is it reflected?
What did we do with it? Really? Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that's coming up a lot is, you know, this is how do we not just like do like extractive community engagement, but like how do we build relationships better that are longer term? And so I think I'm really excited about some of the techniques and suggestions that we're going to be getting as we continue this work and really start getting out there and talking to people in the next couple of months. I'm going to pull this, share my screen one more time and just pull this diagram up. And this is that spectrum of community engagement to ownership. And I'm curious if you all had any thoughts, either when you were reading this before, or when I was talking about it on the screen, or now, where you think this project should land, or on this particular spectrum here, you know, or things that kind of resonate with you on this diagram.
Rachel, I do have a larger version of this, if you're okay with me sharing my screen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is a little fuzzy. I'll stop sharing. While he's doing that, any thoughts on that diagram, or anything that is that better? Thanks, Chase. I know
Hey,
it's
Rachel.
a lot to look at.
Hey, Rachel, I have a quick question, and I
Yeah.
apologize. I had to step out for a minute during your presentation. But in terms of reaching out to folks and gathering input from the community, what forum are you doing that in? Is it more like during the pandemic? Like, are you doing it more online, or is this in person?
So the city has not been conducting a lot of in-person events during the pandemic, or talking to. We've been completely virtual, but I think that may shift, depending on how things go this fall. So I think that we're certainly hoping to do some in-person engagement, especially. As this project progresses. We're not looking to do one big engagement bonanza and call it a day. This is going to be an iterative process. So if we're unable to do in-person stuff in September, maybe we could push to do more in person when it's a little bit safer. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's certainly my hope. But I think this is just an interesting diagram, looking at like, what are our engagement goals, and then kind of what does that look like in practice? And so it's a kind of makes you think a little bit. But if anyone has any feedback on this, definitely let me know, or if something's resonating, or feel free to shoot me or Chase a note after the meeting.
Well, one of my concerns about just
sure.
having just these types of virtual meetings, especially with low-income Hispanics, is that not everyone has a computer or access to a computer. And so, one concern, just looking at it, could be maybe, I don't want to say a failure, but like a more difficult ability to connect with that part of the population, just because of lack of computer access.
That's
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
True of seniors too. We found that they prefer to call in or meet in person. They won't do a Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we're hoping to get creative here, and I know our consultant team would love to get out there and start talking to people. We'll just we'll evaluate at where we're at and kind of see what we can do. But I hear you on try to really go to where people are at. It's really important. Yeah, Tyler.
I wanted to follow up on Jen's comment, and we have two planning commissioners on the advisory committee here, and this is an area that I've been kind of thinking about as we've worked on the DES project. There's the city things that we're working on and need to do better on, and trying to figure that all out. From a planning commission hat from Scott and Jen, is there any things that you're recognizing, maybe the seniors population not coming into a planning commission meeting. Maybe you've heard from, and this is for Josh as well, at neighborhood review meetings. Are people showing up to neighborhood review meetings like they typically would in the past? Have you heard of any ways of the development community or through the planning commission process that has been kind of unique and a good way that people are reached out to appropriately? Just curious if you've heard anything kind of from that side of the ledger.
Tyler, I can tell you from our NAC meetings, the attendance just fell off a cliff when we went virtual, and it's basically never recovered. So, not that we had a ton of people in the first place, but 10 to 15 would come each month, and now it's outside the board and the presenters, it's maybe 2 people.
Yeah, we hardly have anybody participate on the planning commission side.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. I think I'm at my time here, but I will throw my email into the chat and certainly welcome any comments if they come to you after the meeting. So thank you all for your time, and look forward to, as we start to kind of plan out what some of these engagements will look like. Love to come back and give you an update and hear, kind of share what we're hearing and talk a little bit more about how this is all going.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Rach.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
All right, Alan, you want to move on to the next item?
Yeah, so Tyler, do you want to introduce Megan for the Open Air Beaverton update?
Yeah, absolutely. So if Rachel's been here for 5 years, Megan's been here for 7, and we'll start there. And some of you have met Megan along the way as she's come in and presented a number of times over the years, including, I believe, this past spring. So Megan presented to the BURA board on Open Air Beaverton and the First Street Dining Commons this past Tuesday as well. And so she's got a quick presentation, and I think she may have some questions for you at the end. So Megan, come on in.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. I am going to share my screen. I am famous for not seeing raised hands, and so please make sure that if you have any questions along the way, I am very interruptible, as my colleagues can know. So I am here to talk to you about Open Air Beaverton, a permit program that I currently manage, as well as the First Street Dining Commons, which is that block of First in downtown that we closed off during the pandemic. I'm here to talk to you about how they came about and what their future is, and then ask you just a few questions, and frankly give you some teasers of some bigger questions that I'll probably be coming back to you in a few months to talk about. Let's see. There we go. So I'm going to start with a little bit of history. Let's talk about Open Air Beaverton first. So what is the history? How did we get there? We then just did a parking survey. I am not the parking manager. Molly Rabinovitz will be coming, if she hasn't already, to talk to you with the full results of how the parking survey went. I was able to sneak in a few questions about Open Air Beaverton and First Street Dining Commons, so I will be reporting on those today. I'll then be talking about the future of Open Air Beaverton, and then also First Street Dining Commons and the future with some of those teaser questions I was talking about. So back in 2019, Rachel Thieme, who's already left, but we want to give her a huge shout out, did a pilot project, a competitive process where we said, all of the jurisdictions around us are doing this really cool thing where we're allowing restaurants to expand into the on-street parking spaces. We should be cool too. So let's figure out how to do that. So we did a competitive process, and with a $25,000 grant, did this beautiful artistic street seat, and the winner of the competition was Milk and Tea. So it was put on a couple of parking spots outside of Milk and Tea. And from that summer experience, we then moved forward with the creation, starting to create a permanent program with the intention of rolling out in 2020. Well, then this thing called the pandemic rolled out, just ruining all of our plans. We were about 85%-ish baked on the Street Seats program and realized the way we're rolling it out probably isn't what we need in a pandemic, when we now have restaurants and we have gyms and we have medical facilities, all of which are needing to expand outside because the state is closing them down. We can't eat inside, we can't work out inside, and they need to be able to use parking areas, both what we had been dreaming about with Street Seats, which was the right of way on street parking, but we also said they need to be using some of their parking lots and private parking lots, and maybe they want to be able to close streets. They're doing that in some other jurisdictions. So let's go ahead and see what they want to do. So Rachel and I, frankly, went off and started giving emergency grants to small businesses. And so Sarah King had just started. And so she took the ropes from Rachel and said, I'll create Open Air Beaverton Recovery Program, which is what we have been operating under for the past over a year. It was a permit program that was tied to the city's state of emergency. And what that means now that we're here today, it means the state of emergency is probably going to end at some point here, God forbid, God help, sometime this year. And when it does, though, this program goes away and all of the rights that we've given these folks also go away, because essentially the way this was technically created was it was tied to the state of emergency and said, we're going to lift enforcement of certain codes that currently think these things are illegal. So now Sarah King went off to do other wonderful things, handed the program off to me, the third owner of this, and said, hey, you go figure out how to go change some code and make things permanent if that's what we want to do. But that gets us to the question, is that what we want to do? So one of the first things we did was we decided to do some community outreach. In comes the parking survey. We had over 1,100 people participate in a survey about parking, which I find absolutely bonkers and amazing. We got over 100 business owners, over 140 employees, and over 800 customers. We had an English, Spanish, and Korean. And the bottom line was they all said, yes, we want Open Air Beaverton to continue. And frankly, we also want the First Street Dining Commons to continue. So given that, we've now had multiple conversations with both City Council and BURA, and they have instructed staff to move forward with a permanent program, with creation of a permanent program for Open Air Beaverton. So Open Air Beaverton 2021. Last week, we released draft guidelines of what a new permit program can look like. Some of the things that we did last year with Open Air Beaverton Recovery Program, notice how that name is different, Recovery Program, we're a little loosey-goosey. They kind of said, this is an emergency. You guys need to move outside and you need to do it now and you need to do it cheaply and we want to support you. Well, some of the things like ADA and wanting to make actual rigid structures, we didn't quite figure all of that out. And so we needed to go figure that out. So we have figured it out and we realized things like the ones that happen to use on-street parking spaces, they're gonna need ADA. You're gonna have to build a platform. We realize that's a cost. And frankly, staff is trying to find funds to help with the cost of that, but we know that that's going to be part of this new guidelines. But those rigid structures you wanted to make that were good looking with wood and maybe some metal on them for the roofing and that sort of thing, we're going to let you do that. And we figured out how to do that. So this new program will include the on-street parking. It will also include some of the private parking. So some of the issues around private parking, for example, were a lot of our private parking lots across the city have minimum parking requirements. And that means they need the parking for parking. And so one of the proposals that is moving forward, you'll see down below, the second bullet is we're actually going to be going before Planning Commission. I guess this is a teaser for the couple of Planning Commission members in the room and City Council to say, hey, we would like to put amend the development code for a temporary amendment that says for 1 year, we're not going to look at the proposals that are Open Air Beaverton permit appropriate. During that year, we're going to review, is changing the development code to allow this use inside of our minimum parking requirements something we want? Do we also want to, we would have to amend design standards within our development code at the same time. Because right now, development standards assume a permanent structure, and none of the structures that are on any of these are permanent. They're not allowed to be attached to the ground. There are only 1-year permits, that sort of thing. So anyway, then the second thing that has to happen is City Council is going to have to actually amend the municipal code to create a new permanent permit program. So like I said, the draft guidelines were released to the public last week with the timeline of August 17th being when public comment is due. It also is the same date that City Council is going to be reviewing them and giving us comments as well. And not only are we going to do on-street parking and private parking, we're finally going to actually permit sidewalks. It's something that the city's kind of said, oh, do you have tables and chairs on the sidewalk? I don't see that those are there in the past because we didn't have code that allowed them. We didn't have code that specifically disallowed them. Now we're going to specifically have a permit program like most jurisdictions do. And we're going to allow them like Karina's, which is pictured here. Okay, so it's just high level changes with the guidelines, just so that you know about them. I'm going to go quickly because I really want to get to questions for you all. It is going to be a permit with a fee. Last year's was free. I've already talked about platforms and rigid structures. There is a question out regarding whether we're going to continue to allow tents. Some people really want them. Some people really don't want them. People being some of our regulators and some of our decision makers. TVFNR actually has a huge say in it, and they've been off fighting fires, and so haven't been able to actually have Jeremy Foster, who's our key person, meet with me until this week. So I'm hoping to get his opinions this week. And then for parking lot permits, we are limiting the number of parking spaces that they can use, allowing structures, and again, the 10 question. Okay, timeline is pretty fast. We're going to be going to City Council with those draft guidelines on the 17th. And then first thing in September, the 7th, and then the 14th will be the first and second reading of the ordinance that creates the permit programs. On the 15th, I'm hoping to go before Planning Commission. And then on October 5th and 12th will be the first and second readings of changing the development code, should that be what Planning Commission moves forward recommending. The state of emergency, at this point, I am anticipating that it will end October 12th. To be honest, it technically ends in August right now, but the City Council is anticipated to continue it through October 12th. At that point, the temporary program goes away. And so that will be the date that the permanent program will go live. And then we are giving businesses, almost 6 months to be able to comply with the new regulations, especially since most folks who are using these spaces right now will have to have some changes. Most of them will not be in compliance for one reason or another at this time. Okay, I'm going to pause briefly. This isn't the place that I had questions, but I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to ask me questions before I jump to First Street Dining comments. Okay, seeing none. First Street Dining Commons. So in response to the pandemic, we did something we had never thought of doing before. We closed this entire street and just made a dining plaza out of it. We put out tables and chairs and ultimately tents and heaters and said, you have a socially distanced safe space where you can be still taking takeout from our businesses and you can still eat there. To be honest, it's become a lot more than just trying to save our businesses. It has become a destination for a lot of our community. Most recently, when we rolled out the summer kit, we also added a kid zone. People are loving the kid zone, and it's a place where they feel like they can safely come. And it's becoming a conversation around equity. Some people are able to bring, hey, you know what? I can't really afford to take my entire family of 6 out for dinner, but maybe I can bring some food and then go buy some. Or I can have a group of people where some of them want to go, spend $40 on sushi for a couple over at Koya Sushi, which is my favorite sushi restaurant, hands down. And not everything there is expensive. I didn't make it sound expensive. And the other person can go get whole bowl and they can meet in the same place. So City Council and then BURA decided that they wanted it to continue. So City Council paid, general funds paid for it the first fiscal year. BURA has funded it for this current second fiscal year. And we are scheduled to close it for the winter this time, see what that looks like between November 1st and spring at some point. And during that time, we want to explore, is this something that we're wanting to continue on an ongoing basis? Again, the survey said that the community wants this on a permanent basis, but what does that look like? It's taking 11 parking spaces. It is right in front of some businesses that can't get direct benefit. What does it change? What does it mean for some of our other projects like the Loop, or ultimately the improvement of First Street and open space programming and for all of our open spaces, that sort of thing. So the next steps that staff has been directed and what we're going to be doing for fall and winter, we are going to be exploring to try to get help City Council and BURA answer the questions: should First Street Dining Commons continue past the pandemic? And should it be year round or should it be seasonal? We did year round last year. We're going to do seasonal this year. Which one do we think? And then some key questions. If it continues, what form should it take? So we'll be researching 3 options. 1, what if we continue at tents and tables and chairs? It's working now. Why try to fix what's not broken? Maybe. It's not all that attractive. It's not all that permanent. It's not all saying that this is really what we want. Maybe is what some people say. So maybe we want to go to number 2. Let's construct removable structures that provide weather protection. So something Instagrammable and sexy, but weather protecting, and something that, however, 9 months of the year is there, but can be removed and stored for 4 months of the year. Or what if we just stop having it be a street and we completely convert it to be a dining plaza permanently? So we're going to be hiring an architect to do very small scope to say, what could it maybe look like for B and C? And then take that and say, what can it maybe, what's the range, a price range that could cost? And so I guess my first question to this group before I get to my teaser questions is, that's the research we're going to do. What are some of the other key questions that you think we should be doing, or research we should be out doing during this time to make sure that that beginning conversation with community, with City Council and BURA can have? And before you actually answer, I should have stated my assumption of next steps is that they will begin the conversations, and if they determine that it should go beyond the pandemic, then we need to do a large community engagement effort to really focus on what does the community want for the space. We made it up and used rules of what we thought the pandemic needed. What is the permanent needs of this space? And then really dive into B or C, for example. But what other research maybe should we be working on while during this time?
Megan, outside of the survey, which is an obvious point to it, we should be doing this. Is there any way we can look at it to see if it's been successful or not? I know we don't have, probably a year worth of, I don't know how to look back at it. But is there any way to see how successful it's been for those businesses in the area, or not been for some of those businesses in the area?
That's a really good question. So a lot of the businesses in the area were responders directly to the survey, and I'm the one managing the space, and so I've been doing a lot of checking in. Restaurants absolutely love it. I haven't found a single restaurant who says that they don't love it. I also have found almost all the dentists and chiropractors in the area love it. They even think that they've gotten more clients. I don't really choose my chiropractor and dentist by walking by them to go to a cool place, but if they love it, I love it. We have some direct folks who are missing some ADA parking, and that they're, especially older folks, aren't able to now find parking within a couple blocks of their space. But that has been 2 or 3 out of the larger number of businesses that are right and immediately impacted. The majority of the other businesses that have stated that they just wish that they had more parking aren't in the 2 to 3 block radius, so to speak. But that parking is their number one complaint by their clients. And so that's what they're hearing. But again, as the statistics, the survey showed, the majority of the folks are really approving of it and wanting it to remain. Does that answer your question? Or how do you recommend we go about answering that question if what I just said didn't seem to hit on the T the way you wanted it?
Yeah, no, I was just racking my brain on how would you say that it has been successful in the few months or the year that it has been up and running outside of the survey. And I can't answer that. So I'm just curious as to if you had any thoughts on that.
One of the other pieces of data I use, and again, I would love if others have ideas, is the fact that we've had more restaurants open during the pandemic than closed, and most have not been able to state that. And frankly, that's a different presentation, but so I don't have the slide in front of me, but of the 5 or 6 that closed in the last year and a half, there was only 2 that were due to the pandemic. The others were probably going to have closed anyway.
Hey, Megan. I don't know if I have any questions per se to add, but in all of my all the cities I've been to, they had this type of like cordoned off street, like a piazza of some sort for pedestrian traffic. They have always been successful, been huge, huge districts or huge areas for pedestrian traffic, and the businesses always did really well. And I think, I hope you're right. I hope we do come out of this emergency with the pandemic in the next month or 2. But with the Delta variant, it looks like it could be in this for the long haul. So I think it would be very helpful for the businesses out there on First Street to have those extra outdoor areas where they can continue to serve customers, especially in the wintertime. So I think it's a great idea. Keep up the good work.
Are you suggesting, Josh, that we may not want to close for the winter? That's actually something I hadn't
yeah, I think the winter is probably when it would be most valuable for the businesses.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on real quick because I believe that I've taken up my time. So I'm going to give you my teaser questions real quick. Okay, so we're going to go off and we're going to do some research, and then and we're going to continue to do, so I said we're going to do the next steps looking at these 3 forms. We're also going to look at what does management look like. So right now we have some staff and we have some on-site management being provided by Lionheart. They have been very gracious for 2 years, but are officially retiring in October. So we know that we will no longer have them being able to be our on-site. So what does the long-term management look like? And what does that community engagement look like? So my teaser questions that these are my questions that other questions I want to be asking. And I really think that this group would be great to answer some of them. What does right sizing look like for community engagement if it's determined that we want to move forward with some sort of permanent model? What are the pros and cons to being temporary versus permanent? What are the pros and cons of deciding, should it be year round or should it be seasonal? And how would a permanent, whether it's seasonal or not, closure of this block, how would it affect the current businesses and residents and customers of the area, future development and investment in the area, and other city projects? Think of the Loop, think of First Street improvements, think of storefront tenant improvement, which you're about to hear about, or improved routes to parking, all of the et cetera. How does it affect those? And these are some of the meaty questions that ultimately our decision makers will have to think about. But for now, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And I will also put my email in the chat if you guys think of anything else that we should be doing over the next winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Hey, real quick. So on those questions that you just teased us with, is that for later or is that for, okay.
Yep, those are questions that I will need to be asking this winter, and my assumption is that this body would be great to help answer. So my hope is that I, if it's okay, I'd like to come back in a few months once I have a little more research under my belt and have you all help chew on these questions with me.
Thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Megan. Appreciate that. Tyler, do you want to get Katie rolling?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tenant improvements.
Okay, thanks, Alan. So Katie, you moved around there. So we've heard 5 years, heard 7 years, and how about 7 months for Katie coming on board here? Katie has pulled her husband along with her from Long Beach, California, and made the big move to Beaverton. And as you heard in introductions, she's moved into South Beaverton. So her and her husband are both feet in on this Beaverton thing. And she's been able to kind of take over the storefront and tenant improvement program from Megan, or with Megan's assistance and guidance. And she's got some thoughts that she wants to run by us tonight about the storefront and tenant improvement programs. Katie.
Great, thanks, Tyler. Can everyone hear me okay? Just if any one of you can nod. Okay, good, thanks. I adjusted my headphones since the last time I was speaking. So I just real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so I can get started here. So as Tyler mentioned, I did move here just a few months ago. We did a big move to make our way to Beaverton, and I've really loved being here the last several months. I bring a pretty unique background to the city. I have about 10 years of experience in construction management, specifically managing renovations on existing buildings, and in fact doing building relocations. So picking buildings up and moving them from one place to another. So, you know, it's been a really interesting opportunity to come and be part of this role where I get to manage this program where we specifically renovate existing buildings, and it's been great. And over the last few months, I've had the opportunity to really take a look at the processes that go into making this program run, and I have some ideas of what we can do to improve those processes. So that's what I'm here to share with you this evening. So for the Storefront and TI programs, just as an overview, since Tyler mentioned to me, a few of you have joined in the last few months and may not be very familiar with the programs and how they work. So just gonna go over some broad level overview of how they operate. So primarily, we have two different kinds of grants: storefront grants, which fund work on the exterior of a building, and tenant improvement grants, which fund work on the interior of a building. For storefront design and improvement grants, we have, Tyler, do you have a question? I saw your hands go up.
I do. I'm not seeing your screen, so I don't know if it's just me
or
if others are.
It says you started sharing your screen, Katie, but it's still black as if you haven't finished sharing your screen.
Okay, it's just thinking. Okay, let's try this again. Let me know if you all can see my screen here.
Still black.
Sometimes it takes a second though. Nothing?
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. It's given a few seconds, and then a few seconds became more seconds.
Okay, well, I can, I do have this. I'm having network problems today. I'm sorry, everyone. I've been having network issues on my laptop all morning. So let's see, maybe if Chase, you're next doing the 10-year update, right? Do you want to hop in and do that? And then I can switch this to my personal laptop and adjust.
Or you can email it to me and I can run it.
Yeah, we can do that too. Okay, let me, I mean, I can just verbally share this and then let me share this with you. Sorry, everyone, just be patient with us just for a moment.
And if the chair wants, I can hop in, either way.
Yeah, either way, Katie, you want to keep rolling without the screen sharing, and we can view it afterwards. Tyler's good at sending that information out, and
yeah, absolutely. I will do that. Let's see. Okay, so Tyler, I'm going to email to you, and if at any point we get it shared, that's great. But if not, I'll go ahead and just jump into details here. So essentially, there are two different types of grants, as I was mentioning. We have storefront improvement, which funds exterior work on a building, and tenant improvement, which is funding work on the interior of a building. So under each of those categories, we also offer the option to do either a design grant, where the city hires an architect to do a design project, sort of reimagining your building for a property owner or a tenant. Or they can do an improvement grant where, say, they have their entire design ready to go and we actually just fund the construction project. So they're all ready and we just help finance things. So with this, we kind of have a little bit of a breakdown here I wanted to share. So the design projects where we pay for an architect to do the work make up about 30% of our grants. So the other 70% are full-on construction dollars. Here we go. I swear there were pictures. So Tanner, if you want to go to the slide after this. So then for improvement grants, which make up the bulk of our grants, right? This is about 70% of the work that we do through this program. We get pretty sizable grants. So the grants are up to $50,000, which is the maximum. And our average this last fiscal year was about $44,000 for storefront grants and about $47,000 for tenant improvement grants. And property owners are eligible to get both, I should say property owners and tenants, because you can do this project whether you own the building or not. are eligible to get both simultaneously. So in some cases, we do have grantees who receive both grants at once. And then we do 2 application rounds. So as of right now, we accept applications in the spring, which with a deadline in March, and one in the fall with a deadline in September. So that next deadline is September 10th. And this is my moment to do a shameless plug that if any of you have a building or a business in mind that would benefit from one of these grants, please feel free to send me an email or intro, and I can give them all the information they could need so that they can apply by September 10th. All right, Tyler, I'm gonna have to do the next slide thing. So with these grant problems, we're making some updates to them. Some of them are pretty small and we're able to do them at a staff level. Others are a little larger. I'm only tonight gonna be walking through the larger updates just for the sake of time. But essentially, because some of these are much bigger and require approval, this is something we're gonna be doing for the next essentially 2 fiscal years. So this fiscal year next, finishing this in July of 2023. You can go to the next slide, Tyler. So the reason behind these updates is really to factor in these sort of 4 guiding principles. First and foremost, the city is a well-rounded resource with talented staff and folks who are very knowledgeable in their field. We have manpower, we have resources. And so the idea here is to really use what we have at our disposal to help simplify this process for grantees, and also to just streamline our process internally so that we're all communicating a little better and we're really tapping into our expertise that we have. If you can go back one, Tyler, sorry, at our disposal. And then as far as equity is concerned, so these sort of 2 middle buckets here are really in hopes to align this program a little better with the stated city priorities that are really at the forefront right now. So the last time we really took a hard look at these programs was about 7 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. So looking at our equity strategy that's in progress, which Rachel spoke with you about this evening, our plan is to sort of leapfrog and pay attention closely to what they're doing and use that to inform the work we're doing here so that we can distribute funds in a more equitable manner. And then the same goes for sustainability. So looking at things like our climate action plan and seeing how we can be using that information to inform what we do here as well, so our projects can have a smaller carbon footprint. And then last, we really want to be promoting these programs, sharing the great work that the community is sort of reaping the benefits from, that we're putting into these built assets, and supporting the businesses that occupy them. And really encouraging other property owners to see the benefit and following in their footsteps and doing this with their own buildings. All right, we're good if you want to go to the next. So we have several updates that I'm already underway on. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the sort of quick overview of these is that we are really trying to raise awareness of the program right now. So if you walk through downtown over the next week, you might notice that we have some new banners that just went up on some of the storefronts that are currently under construction, including Royal Legion and the bakery block now have signs saying this project is funded in part by the City of Beaverton Storefront and Tenant improvement programs. So we're working hard to raise awareness. We're also putting out a simple online application for the first time this fall. So the grant deadline in September, folks will be able to apply online, versus in the past, there was a PDF form that they would have to either print or fill out, and then it's sent to me either by mail or email. So it's a little more user friendly. And then we're also creating some more clear and straightforward grant contracts that really, really put in expectations for what we expect from our grantees, and hopefully our new grant documents are a little more straightforward. And then last, we're trying to really embrace collaboration within the city. So we're bringing on some partners within our permitting divisions to be part of this process as well. So we can prevent issues that come up on these larger projects where maybe permits get bungled or things weren't planned the way they hopefully would have been. All right, we're good if you want to go to the next slide, Tyler. So just to run through some of the bigger updates we're doing on the programs, and these are fairly large, so we will have time for questions at the end, but I'm going to just go through these. So one of the most important ones in my perspective is transitioning to accepting applications on a rolling basis. We have several types of restaurants, or not restaurants, I'm sorry, but businesses that, you know, are working on a tight timeline for when they can complete a construction project. One example is a CPA's office that wanted to renovate their building. They just came to me about applying for the September round, but unfortunately, because of timing, they really need their office to be finished with construction by early February for tax season. And it just doesn't work out for them financially to do either of our grant deadlines, right? And then, you know, we have other cases as well where that's been a challenge for businesses that are not new restaurants. But unfortunately, with our current process, only new restaurants can apply anytime. So we do that because we know that when you're creating a new restaurant, there's all kinds of things that are going on. You're trying to manage, right, balls in the air that impact your project. And we want to be sure that we're accommodating as best we can. But those balls are in the air for all small businesses all the time, right? So even existing restaurants that already contribute to our community need a break sometimes. So trying out a rolling basis process, I think, will be really helpful. And then as part of this, we will sort of, let's see. This is, I'm sorry, I have something here that should be in the next slide, but Tyler, can you go and then to the next one, and then we'll transition. So this was a carryover in the former slide. So as part of this, we'll be hopefully grading these applications with our new scoring criteria and grant award tiers. So the idea here, right now we have a sort of grading rubric that we use that's very open to interpretation, and doesn't really reflect much of our equity-oriented mentality that we're trying to embrace in these projects. So the idea here is to create a more objective scoring criteria that would assign a small range of points depending on where a project falls with certain traits or characteristics. In this case, just as a reference, this is not necessarily exactly what we're doing, but just as a reference, I pulled up the LEAD scoring criteria, which I think is a good example of this, right? Where if a building is next to a quality transit site or bicycle facilities, they get more points for environmentally sustainability. So when we're looking at things like sustainability or equity, having clear benchmarks and characteristics that we're looking for that we assign a point value to will help us better assess applications and do it in a way where everyone is on an even playing field and folks are not put at a disadvantage because their project maybe doesn't look as pretty in renderings as someone who could afford a more highbrow architect. And at the same time, we are looking at tiering grant awards. So rather than what we do now, which is we sort of look at something and we're like, man, it looks like it's a lot of work, we'll give them a 70% match. And then sometimes we look at a project and we think, it doesn't really look like that much work. They get a 50% match. So it's a little bit more subjective the way it is now. With the scoring criteria, we'll have a more objective and equitable approach by ensuring that if someone falls within a certain point total, they will receive a 50%, 60%, or 70% grant match based on how well they're aligning with our stated priorities, and not necessarily our own interpretation of what their project entails. So go ahead and go to the next slide for me, Tyler. All right, so our next biggie is actually combining these programs. So they are actually two separate programs with separate budgets and separate geographic areas. So the Storefront program and the Tenant improvement program are right now separate, but they operate almost identically, except for a few factors. And internally, a lot of our work is mirrored from one to the other. So we're hoping to really simplify processes by seeing if we can combine them into one building improvement program. And that would actually help our grantees as well. This spring, this summer, I've been interviewing grantees who went through both programs at once. So those rare people who get a Storefront grant and a Tenant improvement at the same time. And all of the ones I've spoken to have told me they found it extremely confusing. Going through both programs, getting two contracts, two grant agreements, two budgets, working with their contractor on numbers, what was inside, what was outside. It was all very difficult for them. And so making that easier would be a result of this. And then this will also give us the opportunity to explore what qualifies for certain types of grants like tenant improvement. If we feel there's value in supporting non-restaurant retail, this would be a great moment for us to look at what we give money to. The tenant improvement program is only for restaurants right now. So if we want to expand it to give to other grant programs or other restaurant types, business types, that would be great. If we feel that's a valuable step forward. Clover and Booch, which is pictured here, is a good example, I think. They received a tenant improvement grant recently for their kombucha bar, just the square footage of that, which is in their business here in the round. And you can really see that, they've illustrated a space that is really successful having partial retail mixed with beverage service. And while we only funded the beverage service portion of their space, I think that shows that there's promise and interest in potentially expanding this somewhere else. So we'd like to do some feasibility study to see what opportunities lie in that. Tyler, if you want to go to the next slide. One of the others that we're looking at is potentially doing an upfront reimbursement. So right now we require that our grantees pay for all these project expenses and then we pay them back. In the case like Tantan Cafe shown here, their project ended up costing almost $400,000. They did a large renovation, interior and exterior, and they received about, I believe it was $70,000 in grant funds combined between the Storefront and tenant improvement program. So we really helped offset some of that cost. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot of money for them as a smaller business that's, a BIPOC owned business to be paying for that money upfront and then waiting weeks and weeks for the city to be able to reimburse it and run a check, right? So when we can help out, I think this is an opportunity to make this process more equitable. There are other grant programs at the city that already do this. And so putting the same processes they have into place where we can issue partial funds up front and then follow up with the remaining funds at the end when the project is executed. I think there's a really great way we can go about doing that that supports our smaller businesses. Tyler, if you can go to the next slide. And then this is my last one here, but looking at the opportunity to expand our architectural and branding services. And I just have to take a moment to nerd out on this rendering that we just got in about 2 weeks ago for Covenant Clock, which is at First and Tucker. They just finished a design grant with us for their storefront. And they're really excited about how they can renovate their building. I think it's going to be very transformative. But anyway, so this is a great case study actually with them being a Latino-owned business, working with an architect that is COVID certified, so meaning that they also have minority ownership in their business. And I think, they've really understood each other and had a really good dynamic, in part because I think they have similar backgrounds and experiences. And I think that's a value that not a lot of our grantees get to have, because frankly, we just don't have a wide range of architects to assign on design grants where the architects have a staff that comes from a diverse background, and especially staff that speak other languages. And so I would like for us to make an effort with our next RFP to really diversify our base of professionals that we're able to pair our grantees with, so that when we do renovation projects, they can be more authentic, they can really reflect the values and desires of the property or business owner in a way that right now I don't think we achieve to the best of our ability. And then we're also looking, sort of as a counterpart to this, at the possibility of in some way helping with graphic design services as well. So unfortunately, with a lot of these projects, we do this beautiful storefront renovation, and then they put a sign on it that, is just maybe a black and white box lit sign that just says the name of their business. And I think that is such a missed opportunity to really make this a more holistic building renovation. So where we can help with graphic design services to also do some very minimal rebranding and help with better signage on our projects as well, I think will go a very long way. So Tyler, if you can go to the last slide for me. So I have a few questions. I'm not sure if we'll have time for all of them, but I will also put these in the chat so we can stop sharing screen and discuss them more as a group. But primarily, I'm really curious to learn what you all think would be a priority for you when it comes to the criteria that you'd like us to be prioritizing in our scorecard as we're grading or scoring applications. What are the traits that you consider to be characteristics of a successful renovation or renovation that achieves BURA's priorities right now. And then I'm also interested in hearing your thoughts on whether we should be supporting interior renovations for businesses that are not restaurants in downtown. And then last, I'm thinking about this idea of rebranding and whether you feel that's a priority or if that's just a crazy thought I had. So I'd like to know if all of you are also on the same page on that or if you have thoughts on that front. So why don't we, I don't know how much time we have left. Chase or Tyler, do you mind time checking me? So I have a sense of where we're at.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I think we're over time, unfortunately,
Okay.
to discuss those. Maybe Tyler, you can include them
Yeah.
in the presentation, sending out afterwards. Does anybody have any questions for Katie? Katie, we appreciate the update. I love the tenant and storefront improvement project. It's great to see all those new graphics and new businesses that have upgraded. It's phenomenal to see. A great program. So anybody have any questions for Katie?
Thank you. Okay, well, and I know we're a bit over time, so I will send out the presentation and along with my email and contact information. And I do strongly encourage any of you to get in touch if you have thoughts. We're definitely at a stage in this effort where we're absolutely taking suggestions. And if anything comes to you in the middle of the night, I want to hear about it. So if you're walking around in downtown and you see something and think that would be a really good thing for us to be doing with Storefront, feel free to get in touch. And I hope to hear from you all soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Chase, I'm going to move on to you and your 10-year anniversary question.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep it short. I just want to do a quick thought exercise. I want you all to remember back where you were November 8th, 2011. Thinking back into that space, if you were a Beaverton resident at that time, you were probably in the process of voting on for or against the urban renewal plan, because that is when it was approved by the majority of Beaverton voters. And so coming up this year, 10 years of BURA's work, 10 years of the different accomplishments we've got going on and all the staff and volunteer time and time of our partners. So we want to take a chance to celebrate that, talk about that, share with our communities about what we've done and what urban renewal can be a tool for shaping the places that we share. And then we want to have some events, marketing around that. So I'll be sharing more in time to come. If you are passionate about events and event ideas, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat as well. Love to hear your thoughts. Not quite enough time tonight, unfortunately, but we do have some good ideas about hosting an event where we're sharing about this and sharing about the stories, not just the buildings we've built, but the stories of people that lives have been improved and changed as Beaverton has changed along with the work of BURA. So we got that coming up. It'll be in November, and we'll have some marketing to go around with it as well as more public education. I do want to shout out to Scott Winter. If we were talking about where you were on the Community Advisory Committee, as you know, for this. So thank you for your long involvement with BURA's work, and many of you as well. It's fantastic getting to work along with all of you. So I really appreciate you, and just wanted to say that we want more celebration of all of you in the months to come leading up to this and at the event itself. So you will get an invite. Maybe we meet in person, maybe to be virtual. We got a plan for all eventualities, but all of you will definitely be getting an invite to whatever we end up doing. That's what I have there. Is it okay if I move on to the BURA updates? All right. There are a few really big updates, more than a few actually, going on in the urban renewal area. First things first, 3 major new property purchases. Major in my book as far as really exciting. There is more property that has been purchased in what we're calling the Beaver Dam West area, over on Cedar Hills in Milliken. It's got some frontage on Beaver Dam Road, and it's hopefully going to be closing September 30th. So a lot of work we're doing, engaging with the tenants and some new processes we're doing to try to equitably engage with folks as we are purchasing properties. There's a West Lombard lot. So if you know some of those fields over in the Beaverton, the vacant lots and fields over by the Beaverton Transit Center, purchased 2 acres over there. So a lot of exciting transit-oriented development opportunities there right next to the transit center. And then Jerome, you're especially going to know where this is at. For those of you who've driven a lot of long haul and you've seen the old Buffet Palace site, we purchased that site as well. So that site has been fenced off or will be fenced off, and there's some development concepting going on for that. So it's really at a key corner there, just outside of the Round and in the heart of some of the urban renewal area. COVID housing program, this isn't BURA, but it obviously affects folks in the area. Just wanted to update you that to date, over 1,040 people who've been affected by COVID. These are residents in Beaverton, have been assisted with emergency rental payments. So that's something that some of my colleagues and other staff at the city have been working on. And I'm going to jump down. Loyal Legion, right down there on Watson and Canyon, is very exciting. That should be opening in August, early September. 99 taps, German food. Talked about that before. They shared with the downtown parking plan that we got over 1,000 responses, and we should be hearing at our next meeting, hopefully from the parking consultants on that and the parking management team, to talk to you more about what we heard and where we might be going next, and hopefully some potential options for what they could be recommending for downtown parking. So exciting there. There's also a contract that we're looking to execute now for a 2-year pilot program for parking compliance. So this is working with ambassadors that we hire to work with people and educate them about parking downtown. They have the power to write tickets, but it's not about writing tickets. It's about getting people to follow the rules that we have there, and not necessarily having to engage directly with or tax police resources immediately, but being able to kind of have more of a community-focused staff interactions with both the businesses and people parking in folks downtown. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch the Bureau board meeting that Rachel mentioned, where they went over some of the spectrums and the continuums that she shared. Really interesting stuff going on there. Restaurant week planning is just kicking off, so you'll be hearing more about that. And then Milliken Way, so some of the improvements to Milliken Way and the extension there. There should be some engagement activities going on winter and early next year that should be happening. Last but definitely not least, I want to shout out that construction has started on Western Avenue. This is a project we've been talking about for a long time, and now it is under construction. So if you're over there, you'll be seeing some of the lane improvements going on, some of the streetscaping, as well as adding the bike lane and other things that are happening over on Western Avenue. And I spoke too soon. Truly the last thing, library fountain improvements. Many people have been asking when I've been out there, what's happening with the park by the library? When is the fountain going to reopen? Some folks thought development was going on there, and what we're saying, no, actually, fountain improvements. There's going to be lighting and jet components, a new splash pad, opportunities for music, and that should be opening a little bit later this summer. You can go to fountain updates on beavertonoregon.gov to find out more, but that will be really exciting when that opens, and we're going to be sharing out a ton more about that as that comes up. That's what I got. Woo, time to catch my breath. Next time, I want to be giving shorter updates and provide more of an opportunity for you all to ask questions about what you've read in the updates. So just take a look if you get a chance when we send it out in advance in the next meeting, and I'd love to open up the floor and have more time to hear from you what you want to hear about, or what I can go back and talk to other people at the city about. If you want me to ask them a question about what's happening with this or want to know more, that's what I'm here for. So happy to do that for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Chase. I'm out of breath for you. That's amazing. Hey, so I'll take a motion and a second for the approval of the June minutes.
I move to approve the June minutes.
Hey, Eric. Second, somebody?
I second that motion.
Hey, Nathan, second. Good job, Jerome.
Jerome.
So all those for approval, just probably raise your hand. Be great. Perfect. Minutes approved. And Tyler, just as a refresher, we're not meeting in September. We will be back on October 4th, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So the dog days of summer are upon us. We get to meet once. We tried to throw a lot at you tonight. Obviously, it didn't give opportunity to have a lot of back and forth because of the presentations. And you can see there's a lot of information that our project managers are trying to get out, and they're wanting to get feedback, and we just we don't have a lot of time to do so. So thank you all for spending your summer evening with us. Enjoy the Olympics this final week. Megan Rasmussen, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time, as you could be spending your time with your new baby too. So everyone, if you have any thoughts, please send them our way. We will send out the PowerPoints and those questions that the project managers had for you, and spend some time thinking about it and kick them back to us, because there's a reason why everybody wants to come in and visit with you, is to get your feedback.
Perfect. Tyler, I always forget, do we have to have a motion to adjourn this meeting, or do we just hit the red button?
You can have a thank you and see y'all.
Red button. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a good summer.
Thank you.
See everyone in October.
Peace.